اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم به نستعين الحمد لله الذي جعل الحمد مفتاحا لذكري وسببا للمزيد من فضله ودليلا على آلائه وعظمته ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين أرواحنا له فداء. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألم تروا أن الله سخر لكم ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وأسبغ عليكم نعمه باطنة وظاهرة وباطنة ومن يجادل في الله بغير علم ولا هدى ولا كتاب منير صدق الله العلي العظيم. ومن الناس من يجادل في الله بغير علم ولا هدى ولا كتاب منير صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته جميع المؤمنين والمؤمنات. First and foremost, I congratulate all of you on the auspicious occasion of the Dahy al-ardh, the day in which we remember, or at least we recognize, the expansion of the earth, at least as the translation of this concept is, Dahy al-ardh. Inshallah, in tonight's lecture, this evening's lecture, I want to point out three aspects of the Dahy al-ardh. One regarding knowledge of this particular event, its importance. Secondly, its relationship to spirituality. And third, responsibility. So inshallah, I'll just touch on these points briefly. So when it comes to the knowledge and understanding of Dahy al-ardh, as we mentioned last night in our tafsir class, that as some of the ulama, they have stated also within the rawayat, because the asl, or at least that statement, its origin is the hadith of Rasulullah and the Ahlul Bayt alayhim after salatu wasalam. And that is knowledge, or knowledge about one's deen is the most important knowledge. And we stated that knowledge about our deen is not just simply that a person knows fiqh, usul fiqh, the ahkam, the person knows the Quran, or these specific things that one may think or assume that, oh, well, only these religious sciences of hadith, the science of hadith, ulum al-Quran, that these are studied in the hawza. But to have knowledge of one's deen is to have knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation in its entirety. And I say this because, unfortunately, sometimes we are conditioned with this perspective of knowledge and understanding that, again, in most of the world today, that when you enter into a university, when you enter into, even from elementary in the beginning, so there's this idea and there's a concept of knowledge or sciences, and they're divided into two major sections. One is the humanities, and of course, if you're in the university, religion gets categorized under the humanities. These are, again, kind of the soft sciences, as I say. These are humanities. Social sciences, history, all these are part of humanities. And then you have the hard sciences, as I say, the empirical sciences, chemistry, engineering, all these type of things, medicine. And so we're taught to separate these things, or we are actually conditioned to separate those things. When in Islam, these things are not separate. Fortunately, what happens in most of our conditioning, or conditioning of most of the people, they separate these two things. Okay, well, there's the humanities, the soft sciences, and there's the hard empirical sciences. And then what happens, many folks who go down the route of studying, okay, well, we're going to study these empirical sciences, these things that we can calculate, we can examine, and then they'll use that in order to come to this conclusion that, oh, well, because we can understand things, or almost everything, of course, they don't understand everything, as we've mentioned before, and even there are things that are unseen that they believe in, and they just simply base it on their, probability or certain evidences, but they're like, oh, well, we don't actually see dark matter. We've never seen it. But because of this indicates that it exists. So they use these empirical sciences to come to this conclusion that, well, Allah doesn't exist. There's no God. But as Muslims, we don't separate between these things. In fact, our understanding of science is something that leads us to belief in God, to belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, belief that there's a creator of all of this, that this thing this universe and whatever is in it, and its order did not just simply pop out of nowhere. It's not haphazard. It has a creator. So, and because these, as I said, these sciences are not, at least if you truly study Islam, meaning you study the revelation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you study the hadith of Rasulullah and his Ahlul Bayt, alayhim afdalus salatu wassalam, that you see that there's these indicators that are guiding us towards these sciences. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He swears, وَالشَّمْسِ وَضُحَاهَا وَالْقَمَرِ إِذَا تَلَاهَا. When He swears by the sun, by the moon, when He tells us, look at, look at this camel, how it was created. How did it come into being? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is guiding us towards these things and the study of these things. So Dahy al-ardh also, in the same sense, is that perspective where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's, of course, it's the blessed day, which we will come to, about the spirituality of this day or the event. But it is a moment when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is placing before us, and He says this in the Quran, wal-ardhi dahaha, that He has expanded this earth. Or tahaha in Surah Ash-Shams as well. He's expanded it. So He mentions these things not just simply to mention them, but for us to understand them, for us to look into them, for us to use these sciences to understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And one of those interesting aspects, and this is, again, where we actually delve into this, and this is an unfortunate thing that even, unfortunately, in most of the Muslim world, we also start studying the sciences as, oh, well, we have humanities and we have sciences. We never look towards, or at least we've stopped looking towards, not never, but we stop looking towards those things that, no, these things are intertwined. They are interconnected. So linguistics, for example, is part of what? Is it sciences or empirical sciences, or is it humanities or empirical sciences? Which one? Humanities, yes. So linguistics is categorized in the humanities. But if we truly understand the language of the Quran, one of the miracles of the languages of the Quran, or they say the i'jaz, the very interesting aspects of the language, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He uses this word, Daha, that He's expanded the earth. That what exactly is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stating? Because there's another concept, another term that also, it refers to this idea of expansion as well. It comes from the same root. As I mentioned before in part of linguistics, there was a knowledge called ilm al-ishtiqaq, or what they call etymology. So what are the roots of words, and where do these words come from? And how does, even you have the same letters, but the letters can be in different order. So for example, tafsir, fasara and safara. This is kind of the easiest example for you to understand. So fasara, to do tafsir, to expound upon, and safara, to travel. That though the order of the letters are different, in ilm al-ishtaqaq, in etymology, Arabic etymology, they say that there's a common meaning for these words. And so that common meaning for fasara and safara, travel, is to travel, to explore, to journey, take a journey. So whether you say fasara, in other words, tafsir means that you're taking a journey of knowledge. You're exploring ideas and concepts of what? Of the Quran. If you give a tafsir of the Quran. If you take a journey, then you're exploring on your trip that what are the things around you? That where am I going? Where am I heading to? So in the same way, this word daha, there's another word in Arabic that also means the same thing, and it also is used within the ahadith as well. It's called dahdah. So daha, dalha, and dahdah is dalha, dalha. Let's just repeat it. So dahul ardh, dalha wa. Why am I saying this? And what is the significance? Because when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He talks about dahul ardh, the expansion of the world, it also implies that common meaning in ilm al-ishtaqaq with dahdaha. And what is dahdaha? And this is classical Arabic. I don't know if any of if you guys have heard of this, you speak Arabic. But you will say rajulun dahdahun. Or you can say imra'atun dahdahatun. And what does rajulun dahdah means? Dahdahun means a man who's short and he has a round stomach. Or like if a woman, she's pregnant, imra'atun dahdahatun. That she's pregnant. And also dahdaha also means to expand, but to expand in a way that is round. So both of them have, again, a similar meaning. And so daha, which is the root of dahwun, or at least the common letters, daha, means not only to expand the earth, but also to shape it in a round shape. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives us this information, again, He's making this ishara. Just like when we come to the Quran and we read the Quran to extract the rules of our actions. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Kutiba alaykum as-siyam, kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum. He says, fasting has been prescribed for you as it has been prescribed for those who came before you. But He doesn't list all the rules there. He said, look, fasting, you have to fast. And then the rest of the rules, you go to the hadith, you ask Rasulullah, you ask the Ahlul Bayt, alayhim afdalu salatu wasalam. Likewise, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's swearing by the sun and the moon, He's swearing by the earth. And we mentioned 2 weeks ago in our class on Nahj al-Balagha, how in khutbah, sermon number 14 of Nahj al-Balagha, where Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, alayhi afdalu salatu wasalam, he points to this very interesting geological fact. He says that there are different, the surface of the earth is not all the same. In some places there's a great depression, or there's places that are kind of perhaps below sea level, or its level is low. And he says this about who? About the people in Basra. Inshallah, you can go read the tafsir, or at least that sermon. So he's indicating, and this is what also Ibn Hadid, he says in his commentary of Nahj al-Balagha of sermon 14, he says that when Amir al-Mu'mineen, when he says Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi afdalu salatu wasalam, he points out this aspect about Basra. He says this is something that no one knew at that time. And I encourage the students to go look up this fact. And of course, the earth is constantly changing with the changing of weather, the rotation. But nonetheless, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's pointing towards these things. The Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdalu salatu wasalam is pointing to these things. And so these aspects of science are there not for us to disconnect from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but to understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to gain knowledge about the reality of His creation. So Dahul Ardh has that significance, has that importance for us as Muslims, as Muslimin, as Mu'mineen, to encourage us to, again, to understand the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to understand this creation, the earth, and whatever is in the earth. When it comes to the spirituality, the second thing I want to speak about regarding the concept of Dahy al-ardh. And this is something we kind of pointed out in the Salatul Jum'ah, the very beautiful hadith, or actually two hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, where he stated, إِنَّ لِلَّهِ فِي أَيَّامِ دَحْرِكُمْ نَفَحَاتٌ فَتَرَصَّدُوا لَهَا, or فَتَعَرَّضُوا أَلَا فَتَعَرَّضُوا لَهَا. So he says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has special moments in your time. And throughout your lifespan, you'll see that there are special moments. Some of them that we are very much aware of, as I pointed out, nights of Qadr, the Eids, Eid al-Fitr, Eid al-Adha, Eid al-Ghadir. We're very much aware of those things. But there are some that we may not be too much aware of. And one of those things is the Dahy al-ardh. What is its significance? Other than, so on the calendar we see it, and it says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions it in the Quran, and this is the expansion of the earth, meaning that the land mass, it started from the point of the Kaaba. Like it was water and then land came up from that point. Its significance we can find in the Mafatih al-Jinan, and some of the riwayat of Ahlul Bayt, alayhim afdal salatu wassalam. As we mentioned, that one of the significance is on the day of the 25th of the al-Qa'dah, meaning tomorrow, that the ibadah, our worship in that day, or even in this night that we start from this night, the eve of the 25th of the al-Qa'dah, that one receives the reward of ibadah for a year. So take a moment simply to make a dhikr, or even if you're just sitting and reflecting upon your connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that in itself is ibadah. In fact, in the hadith of Rasulullah, khayrul ibadah, or even thinking a moment of thought is better than 70 years of ibadah. But think in this night about your connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you reap the reward of 1 year's worth of ibadah. And when it comes close to dawn of Duha, as is said in the Mafatih al-Jinan, and again, this is another indication of Duha. What Duha? What is this dawn? What is the significance of this dawn that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala He's mentioned? But that's not our speech. But when it comes close to dawn, then you make a 2 rakat salat. That 2 rakat salat, and each of the rakat you recite Surah al-Hamd, Surah al-Fatiha once, and you recite Surah al-Shams 5 times. And the barakah and blessings of reciting this at the dawn of the day of Dahy al-ardh is great. Also, what we find within the aspects of spirituality with regards to Dahy al-ardh, the day of the 25th of the al-Qa'dah, is recommended to fast on that day. Again, so you make that fast, that 1 day of fast is like fasting for an entire year. Fasting for an entire year. You get that thawab, you get that reward. On the day of Dahy al-ardh as well, that's 2 rakat salat that you make. There's a dua, it's a very short dua that you make. But then also there's a ziyarah, the ziyarat of Imam Ali ibn Musa, Rada alayhi salatu wasalam. On the day of Dahy al-ardh. Then there's a longer dua that one can recite on the day of Dahy al-ardh. Very beautiful dua. I'm not going to go into the details of the dua, but I just want to point out a few aspects of this dua, so that we can understand the significance of this day. That, again, many of us perhaps we're not aware of the significance of the day of 25th of the al-Qa'dah and the blessings that it contains. So when we read this dua, And again, it's in the Fatul Jinan. You could perhaps look on duas.org, find it there as well. But one of the things that the dua is clear about is a day in which, or at least when you recite this dua, that removes distress. It removes distress and difficulties. Of course, we are always faced with stress, and we are always faced with stressors, I would say that. We're always faced with difficulties in life, but if we want to remove those difficulties, we want to be able to navigate those stressors in our life so that we will come out in a better state, then make this dua on the 25th of Dhul Qa'dah. That's kind of interesting as well, and this is just kind of a hint that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells the Prophet, Alam nashrah laka sadrak. That Allah does what with the chest of the Prophet? He expands it. He says in the Quran, even with the mu'min, He expands your chest. Yawm Dahy al-ardh, the day that the earth expands, but also it could be a day in which our chest expands, meaning that we are relieved from difficulties and distress on that day by connecting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This dua also, in it, very, very beautiful point that it makes at one point. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this dua, فَذْكُرُونِي, that remember me, Ya Allah. And at what time that we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to remember us, so Ya Allah, that when I'm buried in this earth of yours. And we don't know how long we're going to be buried in this earth. Inshallah, hopefully we have children, offspring, grandchildren that remember us, but then, there'll probably be a point that if maybe some years pass and unfortunately, you don't know how far your lineage will go, or even if it does continue to go, then who will remember you? Sometimes people won't remember. And of course, sometimes we do make dua for our, as I say, guzashtigan, for our aba, for our forefathers, and we don't mention them by name. We say, oh, Allahumma ighfir lana wa liwalidayna. That, of course, our immediate parents, but our forefathers, whoever they were. Some of them I don't remember their names. Some of them I remember their names. But we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yes, there will be a point where I'm going to be buried in this earth. You made me from this earth, and I'm going to go back to that earth. So, Ya Allah, fadhkuruni, remember me, Ya Allah, when I'm in your earth and no one else remembers me. And no one else remembers me. That's a very interesting aspect of dua. In this dua as well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or at least we're taught that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has treasures. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for those treasures. Ata'ika al-makhzun. So the hidden treasures, the treasures which are covered, we ask for those treasures. And what exactly are those treasures? Yes, in one sense, we can think that, those treasures are gold and silver, it is titanium, all these things that we pull out of the earth. Yes, on one hand, that is a treasure, and the treasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the greatest treasure that we can gain is the treasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's, or of knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation. Yes, that is a treasure, the gold and silver. But this is a greater treasure, to understand this creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To understand it. And as we understand the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it connects us and deepens our connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The other thing which we read in this dua of the day of Dahy al-ardh is, of course, the salawat that we give upon Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The salutations and the remembrance of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdal salatu wasalam, which again they are one of the wasila, the means by which we are blessed with the treasures of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are one of the means by which we are blessed with so much in this world. And again, if we read the hadith al-Kisa, again, what do you say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He created whatever is in this heaven and earth? لَهَؤُلَاء الْخَمْسَةِ الْتَحْتَ الْكِسَى, for those who are under the kisa, for the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdal salatu wasalam. And one of the beautiful hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that he said that He says that He has created it for us, and I give this to my followers. The blessings and barakah of that is for our followers. And this is a beautiful segue into that last point when it comes to responsibility. What is the responsibility that we learn from this occasion of Dahy al-ardh? If we are truly reflecting upon the significance of Dahy al-ardh, not just simply as a date on the calendar, but truly to benefit. As Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he stated that there are moments in time, أيام دهركم إن لله في أيام دهركم نفحات. That there are moments and times which are special and dear to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أفلا ترصدوا لها? Do you not wait for them? أفلا تعرضوا لها? Do you not embrace them? So part of embracing this moment and time is to understand the responsibility with which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has made this earth. He has placed this earth within our trust. And why do I say this? In the verse that I recited in the beginning, it is verse 20 of Surah Al-Luqman, so chapter 31 of the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says this. Alam taraw, have you not seen? Anna Allah sakhkhara lakum ma fi as-samawati wa ma fi al-ardh. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has placed you over those things. Sakhkhara lakum, in other words, they're under your authority. That you have control over whatever is in the heavens and the earth. Meaning that the earth itself, whatever is in the earth, the gold, the silver, the animals, the plants, everything about this earth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has made sakhkhara lakum. Everything about, again, the heavens and the sky and the atmosphere, sakhkhara lakum. And so if He has placed you in control of these things, a couple of things that we understand. On one hand, we have not been created for this earth, but rather the other way around. It's been created for us. And what do I mean by this? If we think that we are created for this earth, then what will happen? Again, like most people who don't believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say, oh, well, you know what? We have to take and get everything, whatever we can grab from this earth, in this world. Why? Because I've been created for this thing. And if I don't get it, someone takes it from me, so I have to grab. So we're not created for this earth. And subhanAllah, we're not also created for the akhirah either. Jannah and nar. We're created for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you truly want to follow the pattern of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdal salatu, we're not created for this earth, nor are we created for heaven, hell, these things. We're created for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so those individuals who understand this, they understand the meaning of sakhkhara lakum ma fi as-samawati wa ma fi al-ardh. That when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He places you as a custodian of this earth, among the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning that you have a responsibility with regards to whatever is in the earth itself, whatever is in the heavens. It's your responsibility. The earth itself, the plants, animals, the people, human beings, the other creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is placing you in charge of it. To do with it what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to do with it. Not that, again, if we think that, I'm created for this earth, then we do with it what we want to be done with it. And this is why it's also significant that this day of Dahy al-ardh, it's also a very special day in relationship with the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As I mentioned, one of the hadith that is narrated in Bihar al-Anwar say that the day of Dahy al-ardh, or the 25th of al-Qa'dah, is the birthday of Ibrahim Khalilullah, and Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam, the friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is stated in that hadith as well, it is the day or the birthday of Isa ibn Maryam, and Nabi Isa ibn Maryam. And interesting as well, and of course, these are the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are the individuals who Again, they had that custody, that they were custodians of this earth. They were custodians and trustees of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with regards to everything in this earth. Everything in this earth. But we too, as followers, if we walk that path of the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if we walk that path of the anbiya, we walk that path and we live that life of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad alayhim afdal salatu wasalam, then too we will become the custodians of the earth. Again, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has created, as He says in the Quran, that mankind, humanity is one among His greatest creation. That we are able to reflect most of the names and the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so that's why we one of those interesting connections too, and this is, it happens to fall on this time in the Dahy al-ardh as well. One of those connections that is kind of close, at least on some of the calendars. It was pointed at least at the July. Today's what? 2nd? July 2nd? Yeah, 3rd. Today's the 1st. Okay, 1st. Okay, 2nd. So anyway, kind of close, but not quite aligned. On some of the calendars, I guess they had the date a little bit off, but that would be the June 3rd, which some of the calendars, they showed that June 3rd would be the 25th of the al-ardh. I think the moon was sighted a little bit early, but had it aligned. Then also one of the more recent, I would say, awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well, that it is a date that is also connected with him, and that is Ayatollah Ruhollah Imam Khomeini, rahmatullah alayh, wa qaddasallahu sirra sharif. That it is his day of wafat, that this is the day he passed away. But he also took this idea and this concept of being a custodian of the earth also very serious. This was the reason for which he said that, look, the earth has to be governed, or at least the place that he was from, that it has to be governed by what? By Islam, by the Quran. By that law which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He delivered to His Prophet, that law which the Imma alayhim afdal salatu wasalam, they all sacrificed their lives in order to make sure that it was established. And one of his statements, and very, very beautiful statements with regard to this idea and this concept, and it relates to this idea of Dahy al-ardh, at least as I explained it, that Dahy al-ardh, the day of Dahy al-ardh, is a day that should instill within us knowledge and understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's earth, is still within us a connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, spirituality. So it's not just simply we reflect about the earth itself, understand the earth, understand this creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but use that day to connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then understand our responsibility. So one of those things he says that, look, he says, when this governance, or at least Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or he's pushing for this governance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's law, to whatever extent they are able to implement. He stated that some have kind of misunderstood, or at least they were spreading a distortion of what the goal is. Because they were saying that, oh, well, the goal of these Rouhani or these scholars was against progression. He says, no, it wasn't against progression. He says, not at all. He says, it is not against a progression, but he says the reality, he says, if you look in the past 500 years, and of course this would probably been around, because he passed away around 1989, so 500 years before that, or even in the past in general, he says that if you look, it was the scholars, the religious scholars, who they protected the earth, and they managed the affairs of the earth. He says even with difficulties under the corruption, he's talking about the Muslim world, even with difficulties under the corruption of the Khulafa. So many of the Khulafa, again, because their perspective was the other way, that, oh, we're created for this, so we are going to grab everything. He says the ulama, he says under those circumstances, what were they doing? He says they were protecting the earth. They were managing the affairs. They were managing things, even under that corruption. Why? Because they understood that we're not created for this world, but this world is created for us, And because it's created for us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you have a responsibility towards the earth. You have a responsibility towards the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And those individuals who don't understand this, subhanAllah, very beautifully, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He points out in verse 20 of Surah Al-Luqman. He says, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن يُجَادِلُونَ فِي اللَّهِ بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ وَلَا هُدًى وَلَا كِتَابٍ مُنِيرٍ. He says that, and again, this explains that separation of, again, science and religion. It says those who separate it says what? These individuals, they argue fillah, about Allah, or against Allah, against this concept of divinity, against this idea that, look, well, whatever we have in this earth is connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. From our knowledge, from our science, or even from politics, governments. So no, why do you have to deal with that? And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what? وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن يُجَادِلُونَ فِي اللَّهِ بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ. That they don't really have knowledge. They don't have true understanding of why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala create this earth? Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He create us differently? Male, female, different tribes, different nations, different levels of understanding and ability to understand. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala create us in that way? Different levels of wealth, the ability to understand different sciences. Why? If we don't connect it back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if we don't see that these things are there to connect us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to make us fulfill our responsibility, first and foremost to Allah, with regards to what? His creation. His creation of the earth, the heavens, everything. So they argue about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ وَلَا هُدًى, without guidance, no spirituality. Whatever they do is disconnected. Their politics are disconnected from spirituality. And this is why you will see that one nation looks upon another nation, or one group of people, they look upon another group of people as well. Oh, they're not human. Their life is not worth anything. Rather than looking at, this is the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whatever they look like and however they think, or it's makhluk Allah. It's a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So without knowledge, true knowledge, or knowledge that's connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, without spirituality, وَلَا كِتَابٍ مُنِيرٍ, and without a book that lights their path. It lights their path. And this is the significance of Dahy al-ardh, to instill within us this knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation. One, to connect us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through His creation. Two, and three, so that we will truly understand our responsibility before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with regards to His creation, with regards to the earth, the heavens, everything in it, everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَسَخَّرَ لَكُمْ. And He says this multiple times in the Quran. سَخَّرَ لَكُمْ الشَّمْسِ وَالْقَمَرِ. The sun and the moon, and of course the earth. So inshallah, on this beautiful and blessed night, and inshallah on the beautiful blessed day of Dahy al-ardh, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to connect us to Him, to grant us that ni'mah, as He says in أسبق عليكم نعمه ظاهرة وباطنة, His hidden and His apparent ni'mah, blessings. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for those blessings, ni'mah. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive our sins, to cover our shortcomings, and most importantly, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the reappearance of Imam Zaman, Ajil Faraj Sharif, make us among His helpers, His companions, and those who sacrifice our lives for Him. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك توعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. And there's a request, inshallah, for a Surah Fatiha for the marhumin of the Pir Ali family who are sponsoring the dinner for tonight. Inshallah. Al-Fatiha. Ma salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.